only non-jig ending Partita of Bach. It's number 2, C minor. It's a Capriccio, which means to say, as you like, to your pleasure, a piacere. It's not a dance per se, but it has leaps. The leaps, but not in 12/8 or 6/8 or 9/8 like the jigs, for men dancing to impress the ladies, that they have very strong muscles. It was quite impressive for harpsichord days where you didn't have 88 keys to have a theme that has leaps of tenths. And I think that in the treatment of these two halves, regular organization of the structure, ending of the dominant and returning, it's so much fun to play, literally fun. It's not even, it's like jubilant fun. Especially when you have the secondary voice between the two hands. And I find that very fun because in a way you hear the three voices but you only have two hands. So inevitably there is one that is shared. For instance, there is the section where you would imagine that the two voices in the right hand blend. And perhaps in a playful way, Bach took that in account. Si, re, fa, sol, si, re, do, re, si, do, mi, sol, si, do, la, do, mi, fa, la, do, si, do, la, si, re, fa, la, si, sol. But when you look the stems up and down on the score, you have these suspensions 9/8 with the secondary voice. So combined, and in the second half he inverts it by making the 7/6 become a 3/2. So you have the second instead of the seventh. And there also it sounds like combined mi fa la do si do la, mi fa la si sol, re mi sol si la si sol mi do mi sol la fa la, do re fa sol fa. And perhaps if you want to maintain the independence, you have to play one detached. So you can hear the one that, the two voices that holds over, creating the tension for the dissonance. But with the decay, you don't create a crescendo. You could imagine perhaps, only perhaps, a trill. Or perhaps a prolonged mordent rather. Sometimes that kills the rhythmicity of the pulse because it's so clearly the tenths of the subject. But I still think when it's not in kissing seconds, it's in stretched sevenths. So second, seventh, the first time. And of course the bass does the leaps of the tenths. I can sense Bach's jubilation writing this piece. I know it's a very naive perhaps fact that is so fun to play jumping tenths, but I think really it literally is jubilant. first half on the dominant. He ends up with a half note dominant logically, either to continue from the same dominant, either to return to the tonic for the first repeat. I personally think it's not extraordinary, and it shouldn't be considered because it's outside of Urtextianism, to make a bridge for the first ending with a flow of 16th notes. I don't think it's eccentric. I know some people might think any note that is not Urtextian I try to hold my horses from this overexcited creativity. God forbid Busoni went way more before me and before others. With a chaconne for violin on the piano. But to tell you the truth, I don't feel guilty for suggesting to a student this bridge in minor meter. And the second time, you don't need to do anything but you restart on the dominant, and when you finish with a low bass, but the first ending, if you do the second repeat, why not? It's not exactly demonstrative or willingly shocking or anything. It's just a bridge for the first endings of each halves. I don't know, perhaps I should be, and I am careful, because my students will have to go through auditions and juries and competitions and job auditions in their lives. So if they're enticed by me to, let's say, not only play the authentic score, but improvise regardless if it's only a bridge of 2 beats, even if it's supposed to be having been done in the tradition, but we're no more in the tradition, we're no more in the 18th century. So in a way, we're in the century of the 21st one, where we recite the notes rather than we reinvent them. Of course, there are many ways to implement an articulation for different articulation as an interpretation. Because you have augmented second, and that is more than a melodic semitone or tone. So Bach uses this sort of spiced F sharp, sharp 4 from minor 3, while the suspension ends with a regular perfect cadence. So in this case, you wouldn't think, you don't have to anyway change anything, and you could very well end and go back. And not every time people play all the repeats. Perhaps only the first, perhaps none. I think for perhaps possibly wrong reasons today. Oh, it's going to be boring, or I have to do something different the second time. So why? It's a structure. It doesn't need to be only redecorated. It could be, and why not? But then we enter in a zone away from pianists expected to go through auditions, juries, competitions, where their likeness is what really works, and not the creativity, because it would be considered eccentric. But perhaps in very small dosages, a bridge if you do the repeat. And I'm really careful to not overstate, because I could really redecorate instead of, I could suggest you. I mean, then there's no end to it. It feels like we are off track and we are in a borderless zone and anything goes. That's not possible. At least not as a teacher. I can take my own responsibility as a performer and say, okay, this is my ethics and these are my convictions, and I want to embellish it just enough compared to what I think is good taste. But of course, everybody agrees differently on what is good taste. One's good taste is somebody else's bad taste. The second half with the inverted subject. All the suspensions delaying the realizations. When it's in the middle between the two hands, you feel like you're empowered to have a single voice with two hands, well, on the top and on the bottom. I think that it's really fun to play. Or not. It's not for official performance, but it's so much fun, jubilant, and it's good sometimes. We all have these mournful and intense sarabands which really take the most of us. Introspective and peaceful, but intense, with the different aspects of intervals, gestural. I mean, it's only 2 tritons in a row, right? But of course, the faster you play, the more you see the arrival point of the phrase on the horizon line. If I play slower, I feel like I'm not saying the words, I'm spelling them. But I have the time to hear the leap of the left hand's octaves or sixth, and after the tie, exiting, taking in account the decay. Those decorative patterns, and if you play even slower, it's meditational. Even if artificially over slow, for the logic of the phrase direction, for the pace, the pulse, the motivation of these beautiful gestures and their decay. And of course, when you play you feel the fast. And it doesn't have to be played so loud, it could be played lighter too. Hey, why not? The dynamic range, the articulation, perhaps legato, and the secondary voice non-legato. But the blue notes are there. You establish a tonality with the tonic and the dominant, and then the rest are passing tones. And it would have been fun if it could have been played as a 10th together, but he wouldn't have plugged that. Though he could have done it with the two keyboards on a harpsichord. Oops. That will be. That's ridiculous, but it's fun. Isn't that the very purpose of the word playing the piano? It's an action that is playful in the sense of the finger pleasure, ergonomically speaking. Loves going through the circle of fate from C minor to G minor. Should have just gone, but no, it's not fun. Probably not a mordent on the top note. Besides, we hear better the syncopation in the tenor. And then why not the transition? But where does it end? If I keep adding more and more part de voix and tiratas, what if you do? And then? That is the point, to find a way to moderate one's ardors in excitement that is given by the music itself. The written paper from 200 and more, 300 years ago, my God. So much life, so much juice, so much positive energy. Regardless, it's in minor, but it sounds, it's as, I would say, as jubilant as if it was in major. Of course, it's tainted in minor, but it's not per se sad and happy or happy and sad. It's probably more on the jubilant side with light and inner yeah, it's like, if I could find the word, right? I would be good if I could find the word. I was gonna say something that comes out of you and jumps out. How thankful I am personally to Bach to have given us one jig less, but one amazing Capriccio more. I'm sure he would have done a great jig in C minor. that's all, folks.